The transfer market is over, and the question is clear. Did Barça succeed or fail? Joan Garcia and Rashford have arrived to bring hope, but the defense has been weakened, and the risk is evident. Today, we will grade the market, line by line, with numbers, arguments, and a final verdict that may not be what you expect. Stay with us, as we will examine every decision under a microscope and evaluate not only what was recruited but also what wasn't, which sometimes weighs even heavier. Hello to all, Cule family, welcome back. It's time for the assessment. No smoke and mirrors, no comparisons without context. We will evaluate FC Barcelona's market moves based on reality. The club remains immersed in restrictions, with a strict wage cap and a financial recovery plan that forces them to prioritize stability over headline-grabbing splashes. Laporta and his team chose not to sell key assets, to protect La Masia, and to move with surgical precision in bargain sessions and low-cost opportunities. The question is whether this strategy is enough to compete at the highest level when Europe waits for no one. In the arrivals chapter, 3 names shape the entire analysis. Joan Garcia for the goalkeeping, Ronnie Bardghji for the attack, and Marcus Rashford as the marquee signing. In direct investment, around 30 million, most of which is concentrated on the goalkeeper. Regarding departures, there is less noise than in previous years, but a significant loss in defense with Inigo Martinez, as well as moves like those of Inaki Peña, Hector Fort, or Ansu Fati. The feeling is one of restraint, protecting the core, refreshing very specific positions, and assuming a risk in the process. Here is the snapshot we will work with. Let's start with where Barça has gone from uncertainty to excellence, the goalkeeping. With Joan Garcia, the team gains reflexes, reading of the game, aggression in the box, and a growth curve that promises solidity for years to come. Ter Stegen remains an undisputed leader in the dressing room, but his full return cannot be taken for granted until we see him perform at the highest level for 3 or 4 weeks straight. Esni, for his part, provides experience and know-how for cup games and rotations. For the first time in a long time, Barça does not depend on a single goalkeeper. If one fails, there is another. If the starter is on form, performance doesn't collapse. If precise footwork or command of the area is needed, there are complementary profiles. Few lines in the team offer such quality redundancy. Here, the grade is unambiguous, an A+. It's rare to say this as a Cule, but in terms of goalkeeping, the club can look anyone in the eye. The difficulty begins when you move out of your own box. On the flanks, the right side once again relies on Condé, a centre-back converted to full-back who has more than adequately filled the role but cannot be asked to overlap constantly in every attack. His occasional replacement, according to the plan, will be Eric Garcia, who can cover the flank for a few games but whose best version has been seen in the centre, anticipating, covering the back, not in long sprints against explosive wingers. In terms of design, the presence of Lamine Yamal up front conditions the profile. A fullback who constantly overlaps would open up outside channels for the youngster's trademark cut-inside left-footed shots. Yes, but there is no specialist in the squad who can live up there without exposing the defense. If the season demands fullbacks with constant forward runs, Barça will fall behind. On the left, the debate is more delicate. Bald is a spectacle when fit, but his physical issues over the past 2 seasons force the club to have a real plan B, not just a stopgap. Joffer and Gerard Martin can add minutes, but talking about titles and Champions League knockout stages while asking a youth team player to step up for 2 months is, to put it mildly, optimistic. Flick tried Gerard in the center to see if there's a hybrid resource, but if he doesn't offer guarantees as a fullback in big games, as a centre-back, the margin for error is even smaller. The net result of the market on the flanks is the same as in May. If no one gets injured, they can compete. If a starter goes down, they will suffer. And in a long season, someone always goes down. Now to the heart of the defense. Without Inigo Martinez, the team loses its only pure left-footed centre-back, that piece that allows for clean ball progression to the strong side without turning the body, without asking the midfield to correct angles, and without too many telegraph touches. Araujo is a relative enigma. If he strings together games without injury, his ceiling is very high. If the injury stops return, what was a guarantee becomes a dilemma. Christensen is solid, reads the game well, and doesn't give the ball away, but he needs a physically dominant or very aggressive tackling partner beside him. Kobarsi has shown personality and decision-making beyond his years, but the positional trade on the left and managing diagonal duels require time. If the ideal 11 features Araujo and Cubarsí, adjustments will come with training. If physical constraints force Christensen and Eric into the lineup on big nights, opposing transitions could find gold between the lines. For all these reasons, the defense, as a unit, is not approved for isolated talent but for faith in progression, and faith alone isn't enough against coups de theater. With this setup, the team can defend well at times, press high, tighten the lines, and minimize crosses, but in open scenarios against elite rivals, the current level is fragile. The grade is a bare pass, with the note that it could rise to a 7 if Araujo goes 3 months at his optimal level and if Bald and Condé arrive in form for the season's key moments. The market, without specific reinforcement in the left-footed profile and without a fullback with sustained forward runs, casts its longest shadow here. The midfield, on the other hand, is where Barça most resembles its identity. Pedri and Frenkie, together and in form, turn moments of the game into small works of engineering. Perfect body orientation, passing lanes, tempo, pause, organized pressing after losing the ball. A necessary note: just because a player recovers the most balls doesn't make him a wrecking ball midfielder. Barça has historically solved the anchor role with positional intelligence and the ball, not with a physical bulldozer. If Flick wants a more orthodox balance, he will have to modulate heights and cover with Casado or with a Bernal who needs to be nurtured after his injury. Gavi in full form is the connector who supports the intensity when the team loses its rhythm. Dani Olmo adds driving runs, the final pass, and magnetism between the lines, but his physical continuity is the variable that separates good from excellent. Fermin impacts the score by arriving from deep. He doesn't need 20 touches to appear in the shooting zone, and that, in a team where sometimes the pass is worth its weight in gold, is invaluable. Here, the grade borders on excellence. It's not a 10, because there is no clone of Pedri to guarantee the same control scheme every 3 days, nor a midfield tank that shuts everything down in open space if the game plan calls for an exchange of blows. But the sum of the profiles allows the team to win matches in many ways. With the ball, Barça can isolate its wingers in one-on-one situations or wear down the defense from the inside until the gap appears. Without the ball, they can press high with well-measured intervals or retreat for 15 minutes to catch their breath. By design, resources, and a mix of experience and youth, the midfield is worth a 9.5, with a real possibility of reaching 10 if Olmo stays healthy and Pedri consolidates his playing time. Now to the wingers, where the loud new arrival is Rashford. In open space, few attack the area with his stride and intuition for positioning himself between the fullback and centre-back. If he stays on the left as a left-footed player, his diagonal run inside forces centre-backs to drop half a metre, and that half metre is the difference between a through ball and a panicked clearance. On the right, LAMINE YAMAL brings the charm. Every touch is a promise of imbalance, and with a partner stretching the play on the outside, his radius of action multiplies. Ronnie Bardghji comes in as a competitor for minutes who avoids stagnation. If the plan demands it, he can change the pace, accelerate, and give LAMINE a rest without turning the flank into a highway for counterattacks. Rafinha, for his part, retains the ability to produce, even if not in top form, with a cross, a long-range shot, or pressure that wins a poorly directed ball. This attacking front, by the sheer sum of possibilities, is worth a potential 10. The only warning concerns balance with the fullbacks. If there are no overlaps, the wingers will need to combine inside with Olmo or a very high midfielder to prevent the team from being forced into one-on-one situations. At the striker position, the debate is more subdued. Lewandowski remains a scorer. He doesn't need 6 chances to score 1. Sometimes, half a chance is enough. But last season left a warning sign: stoppages due to discomfort and a few goalless streaks that forced the team to produce in waves from the second line. Ferran, as a number 9, offers initial pressure, short movements, and the ability to find himself one-on-one if the midfielder breaks a line. But he is not, at this point, that clinical finisher who thrives in the red zone against elite centre-backs. It would have been interesting to explore a move for Jonathan David due to his age, salary, and fit, though economic reality anchors such speculation. With what they have, the attack deserves an 8, enough to win most league matches but with questions during peak physical months. If we take the cold average of the grades by line, the result speaks for itself: goalkeepers 10, defense 5, midfield 9.5, attack 9. The weighted average by blocks leaves us around 8.37. This is an accurate snapshot of the squad, not exactly the market. Grading the market as a sporting management exercise requires nuance. With little money, the club strengthened the goalkeeping with immediate impact, added resources on the wings, and bet on a high-ceiling signing. It left the most visible weak point untouched. In this context, the reasonable verdict is a 7. Barça improved where it was easier and left for tomorrow what hurts the most, perhaps because there was no accounting formula to do it today. Competitively, this means the team can win the league if Flick's plan minimizes defensive exposure. It also means that in the Champions League, the margin for error is smaller. In a duel against a rival with fierce transitions, the weak flank or a centre-back low on confidence will be exposed if the post-loss pressure isn't surgical. But it also means that with a fit midfield and dynamic wingers, Barça can dominate 90 minutes without giving the ball away where it matters. The season will be written in the nuances. The condensed game plan suggests 3 principles. First, maximize progression through the middle with PEDRI and Frenkie to avoid forcing the fullbacks into long balls if the opponent blocks the line with aggressive wingers. Every long ball forward is an invitation to run back. Second, protect ball's side with closer inside coverage and the winger dropping back a step in case of a turnover, especially if the opponent places their best accelerator on that side. Third, accept that some days, you'll have to win ugly. If the 11 needs to close down for 20 minutes with a mid-block and clearances, it's not a sin, it's pragmatism. In terms of squad management, there will be weeks for the ministers and weeks for the generals. Barça cannot be expected to fix all the problems. His growth multiplies if the environment measures its demands. Araujo needs to regain confidence through continuity, not miracles in isolated matches. Christensen, with a clear pairing plan, will always be more useful than as a universal firefighter. On the wings, rotating LAMINE and Rashford with Bardghji and Rafinha will avoid plateaus in February, and at the striker position, managing Lewandowski's minutes to ensure he arrives with fresh legs and ankles in March is worth more than a goal in November against a mid-table rival if the risk is overloading him. The story of the market is neither one of revolution nor failure. It's one of partial reform with coherent decisions and an obvious concession. Barça bet on securing the goalkeeping, raising the ceiling in one-on-one situations, and trusting its midfield, which, when complete, imposes its will for long stretches. In exchange, it remained a step behind on the line that allows the least improvisation. If the season falters at the back, the records will not forgive. If the season takes off with the ball, the narrative will shift toward the idea, not the muscle. One last reflection to close the assessment. An excellent market does not always lead to a great season, and a modest market does not prevent competition if the coach turns weaknesses into rules of the game. Barça has enough pieces to play recognizable, winning football. It also has enough fragile points that a series of injuries could again call the plan into question. Between the two, reality evolves. With the starters in form, Joan Garcia established, PEDRI and Frenkie in control, and Rashford and LAMINE firing, the team rises a level compared to last season. Not the leap the most impatient were waiting for, but one that allows them to face the calendar without fear. So, success or failure? For the squad, by the sum of its parts, a pass. The market deserves a 7, a grade that reflects what was accomplished and unflinchingly highlights what remains to be done. Now, the ball is in Flick's court. If his mechanisms reduce the space behind the fullbacks, if the team spends more time in the opponent's half than its own, and if the rotation plan protects the 4 or 5 players who uphold the system, next summer's assessment will have a different flavor. Until then, let the debate serve to better understand where the team stands, not to deny the obvious. Barça has improved, but the work is not yet complete. The market analysis cannot be understood solely as a sum of names, but as a complete narrative of what it means for the club's immediate future. The question many fans are asking is whether this Barça, with its signings and missed opportunities, is truly ready to compete in Europe or if its ceiling remains domestic success. The answer is not straightforward, as it depends as much on what was done as on what was left undone. In modern football, small details make the difference, and what seems like a minor decision in August can become the turning point of a season by March. The clearest example of this is the defense. It was known from the start of summer that losing Inigo Martinez would leave a specific void, that of a left-footed centre-back, and yet, no replacement arrived. This absence, which may seem like a tactical detail, has a direct impact on ball progression, the structure of defensive coverage, and the ease of rotating the defensive line in their own half. Araujo and Christensen are reliable players, but neither has that natural left foot to open angles toward the fullback or temporarily filter passes to the midfield. This is why, in high-stakes matches, Situations arise where the opponent knows exactly where to press and force Barça into long balls. Flick, aware of this deficiency, will try to compensate with automated pressing after turnovers and a high block that limits the opponent's ability to play out from the back. But this approach also carries risks. When the team presses high, the space behind the defense multiplies, and there, players like Christensen or even Eric Garcia can struggle if faced with direct duels against fast forwards. The solution lies in synchronizing the press with midfield coverage, something Frenkie can do in specific contexts but which requires precision and consistency. One mistake in coordination and the entire system collapses. However, the story changes radically in midfield. This is the line where Barça can boast one of the best squads on the continent. PEDRI and Frenkie offer a combination of control and creativity that few teams can match. Dani Olmo, when fit, adds dribbling and the final pass. GAVI brings grit, intensity, and the forward runs that break defensive lines in congested moments. And Fermin is the unexpected wild card, the player who emerges from the second line to score and inject energy. What's interesting here is that Barça doesn't just have quality but also versatility. They can play with a double pivot to strengthen the base, with very high midfielders to suffocate the opponent, or even with a creative trident to dominate through possession. The flexibility is maximum, so the season's impact will depend more on managing minutes and injuries than on the player's inherent level. The attack deserves its own chapter. The arrival of Rashford generates excitement because he adds a profile that didn't exist before: pure speed, power in his runs, and a threat in open space. If YAMAL represents differential one-on-one talent, Rashford is the nightmare of any high defensive line. Rafinha completes the winger trio by providing goals, pressure, and consistency. Ronnie Bardghji will be the young alternative, the one who can freshen things up when the starters need rest. Here, Barça has gone from relying almost exclusively on Ansu Fati and an inconsistent Rafinha to having multiple options. This is undoubtedly one of the market's great successes. The problem arises when looking at the striker position. Lewandowski remains a reference, a player who can decide a match with half a chance, but age and injuries are beginning to take their toll. This isn't to say he has lost quality, but he can no longer be available for 90 minutes in every game. His natural backup, Ferran Torres, lacks the instinct and hierarchy to be an undisputed starter on big nights. This means that at times, Barça will have to reinvent itself, perhaps using Rashford as a false nine or finding systems that don't rely so much on a pure centre-forward. The board had the opportunity to sign a more natural replacement, but the economic context made it unfeasible, and this decision could come back to haunt them later. When weighing it all, the verdict is clear. Barça has improved in attack and taken a giant step forward in goalkeeping but has weakened in defense. Numerically, the average is good, but the market itself deserves a lower grade because it failed to address the most obvious weakness. This is why the 7 proposed as the final grade is fair and balanced. It acknowledges what was done well, but also what couldn't or wouldn't be done. Beyond the grades, the real test will come when the ball starts rolling. Barça will have to prove whether, with these ingredients, it can compete for everything. In La Liga, the margin for error is greater. With consistency and a dominant midfield, it's possible to pick up points even when not playing well. But in the Champions League, it's a different story. There, every detail counts, and every weakness is maximally punished. A fullback who doesn't overlap, a centre-back out of position, or a substitute who underperforms can be the difference between advancing around or going home. And that is the great unknown left by this market. The analysis would not be complete without discussing the youth academy. Barça has once again trusted its homegrown talent to fill gaps, and this has a dual value, both economic and sporting. Players like Cubarsí and Fermin don't just represent the future, they are already contributing in the present. The risk, however, is asking too much, too soon. A young academy player needs time, needs to make mistakes and learn. If burdened with the responsibility of fixing structural deficiencies, they are more likely to burn out. Here, Flick's management will be key, giving them minutes, yes, but not entrusting them with the pressure of saving Champions League knockout matches at 18 years old. In the end, FC Barcelona's 2025 transfer market can be summed up in one sentence. It improved what was easy to improve and left unresolved what was most difficult. It secured the goalkeeping, added spark on the wings, trusted in a luxury midfield, and took the risk of not addressing a defense that was already fragile. The season will tell whether this gamble was clever or reckless. What is certain is that the club remains caught between two opposing forces: the need to compete now and the obligation to survive economically. This tension will shape not only the sporting results but also the final judgment fans will pass on this market. In conclusion, the grade is a 7 with a bittersweet taste, a success for what was recruited, a partial failure for what was let slip away. A market that reflects the reality of a club still healing from its financial wounds, yet continuing to strive to stay among the elite. What happens in the coming months will depend on how well Flick can mask the flaws and maximize the strengths. And that, more than anything else, will be Barca's true test. If you've made it this far, it's because you're as passionate about Barca as we are. On this channel, we analyze every signing, every tactical decision, and every detail that could make the difference this season. That's why I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because here, we don't just talk about the news, we debate it and experience it together as a true Kuhl family. Every like, every comment, and every subscription helps grow this community and allows us to bring you even more complete and direct analyses. Join us now, be part of this Blaugrana space, and accompany us through everything that awaits us this season.